Good morning, everyone. This is Kim Kuchenbrod with Vermillion Advantage. Andrea has asked me to share with you our success when building our talent pipeline and how we've also tied it into the WIOA program and our youth as well as our adult learners in our community. If you have any questions through this, you can always type them in, and I'll be happy to answer them. Okay, right now, as all of you probably have been in the same situation as Vermillion Advantage has been in the past, or Vermillion County, we had a wake-up call several years ago when we lost our GM Foundry. And at that time, they had hired about 3,000 employees. But at that time, we also started looking at the skills gap that we had identified. So what is unique going on here in Vermillion County is the same thing that we're hearing throughout the United States, is employers are having a hard time filling jobs. They're having a hard time with finding employees that have the right skill sets that they're looking for. So Vermillion Advantage went to work immediately trying to identify what we could do to help alleviate the situation. So let me begin by sharing the model that we put together 19 years ago. We started in economic development relationships with our local calls, and in our local calls, we were able to identify all of the situations that were going on where they couldn't fill a particular position. There's a skill gap issue. They're finding individuals with the correct education. They had low work ethic standards, they couldn't pass a drug test, and so forth. So once we started doing our local calls, then we started identifying all those common denominators and those skill issues. So we decided to start with manufacturing, which is the biggest employment base here in Vermillion County. And we started with 12 manufacturing companies, and they were basically the champions for our cause. Now, fast forwarding to 2017, we've gone from 12 middle clusterings to 4 very distinct career clusters, and we are now, as of 2017, we're getting ready to add our 5th one. So our current pillars in our community are advanced manufacturing, logistics, healthcare, and tech services. And in the technology services, that's a lot of your back office, accountings, call centers, government agencies, and so forth. And like I just mentioned, we are now experiencing an education shortage, so we are putting an education cluster in place. This is just a quick snapshot of those who are involved in our process. We have approximately 60 businesses involved in it, and you can see there's some major companies, nationally known, internationally, as well as the local mom-and-pop operations. It doesn't matter the size of the company, but they're all having those experience trying to find that skilled workforce. One of the things that when we started this process, Vermillion Advantage being a hybrid of an economic development corporation and a chamber of commerce with a workforce development component, we became the natural, neutral convener on identifying these issues and bringing like parties together to set a common goal, and that was finding that skilled workforce. We already had confidentiality agreements in place with everyone, so they were willing to come to the table. And when I say willing to come to the table, we have competitors sitting across the table from each other. And you can see the walls that were going up, and people were saying, well, why should I share my work skills needs gaps with you, because you're going to be robbing from my company to meet your needs. And so when we collect all of our data for all of our programs, we share it in an aggregate format for everyone, and we don't really go out and say, okay, company A is needing this and company B is needing this, and company A pays more. So we do not share that very confidential data with everyone. We've moved from being stakeholders in our process to stockholders. Everyone has something to gain from this process and its model, and if they don't, then we dump that program and we move on. Everyone has a voice through this process, and it's a long-term commitment. It's not a quick fix. to go through this. As I stated earlier, we've been doing this now almost 19 years, and some of those same companies are at the table. Now, some have left, whether because they moved out of the community or they ceased to operate and so forth, but the major pillar organizations are still involved in this process. As you can see, we look at the people that are at our table are just not private organizations. There's non-profits, and for example, we include our local WIB. We also have our WIB committees on there. We have nonprofits sitting at the table, those who are serving those hard-to-reach individuals, whether there's someone who has something in their past that's become a barrier to employment, such as a felon. They don't have their high school diploma. There's mental illness. There's a learning disability. All of those individuals are also sitting at the table with us. When we get together, what we're working on is identifying that one common need. For example, recently we just did a study with the Illinois Department of Employment Security, the Illinois Community College Board, and DCEO, the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, is we wanted to look at what our return on the investment was in this process. And so with the confidentiality in place and everything, we were able to go back and identify when did we plant the seed for those students who were interested in healthcare. When did they progress to the next step? How many were completers versus non-completers? How many remained in Vermillion County, and how many were in healthcare still? So we were able to track all of that, including their wage and benefits, and we found out that over half of them are still working in Vermillion County in the healthcare industry. So when we come to the table with each one, the collaborative itself, we come to the table with an issue, and everyone has a voice. For example, we're not going to identify a particular program to meet one company's needs. It meets all the company needs. And then when we roll that out, we roll it out in a pilot program of sorts. We look at it over and over again. We look at the return on the investment. We look on, are we getting the results that we're wanting? If not, we tweak it, or we move on down the road. Before you can start to develop any programs, whether you're working on developing a youth program for your local WIOA, or if you're going for a grant, so forth, you have to look at your data. Sometimes groups come together in a community and they say they have a shortage in a particular career field or a skill set. My question automatically to you would be, how do you know you have that skill set? And what data do you have to prove it? And so what we do here in Vermillion County every January, we go out to our employers and we ask them, we do a job projection, and I ask them, what are your skill sets that you're looking for? What are your new positions? How many of them are replacement? What level of education are you looking for? What's missing? And the businesses very willingly share this information. When we're looking at manufacturing career fields, let's say CNC operators, they will turn around and say, yes, company A needs 3 new, they need 3 replacement, they're going to be retiring. They're looking at high school, associate's, bachelor's degree, and these are the skill sets that they're looking for. What we found last year is we did a study with the, it's escaping me at the moment, but the CNC programs and their certifications through NIMS, and we said, here are the skill sets that we're looking for. Do you prefer them to have these skill sets, or are they required? And we didn't really need to know whether it was for entry or a seasoned employee. We just wanted to know required or preferred. What the employers didn't realize is they were looking at the skill sets that we were looking for NIMS certification. What we also identified in this is many of the manufacturing positions, they're all performing the same task, but they all have different job titles. which makes it very difficult to track some results on that, okay? But what we are, again, we collect this data, we collate it, we look through it all, we return it back out to the public in an aggregate format. That information is not only shared with the employers to know what the needs are, it is shared with government officials, it is shared with guidance counselors at the high school, middle school, college level, workforce development, and our local WIA. Or WIOA. The thing is that's so important to remember, though, is when you start to develop a program, and if you don't have this data in place, how can you set your outcomes and your measurements? This is where your starting point should always be. Once you have your data in place, now you can start developing any of the programs that you're wanting to work on. So you're looking at your company data. You've looked at the skills, trainings, and gaps at all levels. And one of the things that we learned 19 years ago, we started at the top level with incumbent workers and unemployed workers, and we were stuck there. But then what we did is, what are we doing to feed the pipeline? What are we doing to help promote it, to bring them into that? So we went clear down into the trenches, and we actually started down into grade school and then started working our way up. And I will show some of those programs that kind of feed that pipeline in just a moment. So don't think when you're developing any particular program that, okay, you're going to target a specific set of group. What's the next step? Someone's going to have to be there to guide them to that next step. If you're working with WIOA Youth and you're developing, say, a manufacturing boot camp, and they're going to go through it, what's the next step once they're completed? Are you going to help them and walk them through and connect them to the employers, or are they on their own connecting to the employers? You have to be there as part of that support backup system until that person gets into that sustainable employment mode. And once we've done that, then we've identified that there's a skill gap. For example, if we have a new program coming in CNC operators and the employers do not have those tools yet, they don't have that, but they want to expand in that area, then what we do is we go to the community college or we go to the trade schools and we say, here's the situation. Can you develop a quick program, not something that's a semester-long program, but maybe 10 weeks or 12 weeks that can go in-house and work with the incumbent workers, or is it something that we could introduce to the high school CTE students and start building on it from there? When you're working in the talent pipeline process and developing programs, whether it is for the WIOA youth or just for your community as a whole, the thing is you really have to look at a very broader picture. You cannot just look at it in a very microscopic mode. Based on the success that we put together, here are some of the programs that we have put in place. And as you can see, we went clear back through to birth. Many of the programs that we have offered now to our community are in partnership because we can't be everything to everyone at all times. So we've lent our support, and these are the different ones that we have brought into the fold of those coming to the table. The Birth to 5 developmental calendar is something that is sponsored by our United Way, and we're looking at the cognitive development of the child. And we have science academies, we have Project Lead the Way. At our middle school, our Career Exploration Lab is a hands-on program where every 8th grader in the county goes through that program. We also use it for our high school students, and now we are using it for our WIOA youth as well. The students get to go in and explore using real equipment that you would see in the workforce and kind of figure out, is this really what I want to go into? That career lab stations change based on the highest demanding jobs that we are trying to fill, or the hardest to fill jobs here in Vermillion County. At our high school, one area that we were working with and is our College Express program. It used to be a vocational technical training center, which for many years became a dumping ground for kids that the administrators or teachers didn't want on the campus. So we revamped that in partnership with the local community college, our local CTE office, and the high school principals, because they were having a hard time filling positions with CTE instructors. So we now bus the kids to the campus, and they're exposed to college life. They earn dual college credit for those classes, and we also offer the academic classes. So right now, in the last couple of years, we've had a few students who have graduated with their associate credential before receiving their high school diploma. That service is offered to the schools at a reduced cost, and so it saves not only the parents thousands of dollars in tuition and so forth, but the students are coming out better prepared and ready to enter the workforce. If they can earn that credential and that associate's degree is all they're looking for, they're graduating from high school with the high school diploma. Some of them are graduating with the OSHA certification card, their associate's certificate, and then going directly into the workplace. So when they are exiting college, they don't have that high student loan debt that many of the students are experiencing, or they're out there floundering trying to find out what the next step is for them. We're now looking at many of our programs, instead of going for that associate's degree, but that the students will come out with some type of certification. So we are developing bridging programs. For example, in healthcare, we can have a junior in high school go through our CNA program, and their senior year, then they can turn around and be working as a CNA while starting to work on their RN at the same time, and then go directly into the RN and then up into the workforce. From the post-secondary, what we offer a lot is internships. Some of those students have gone through a WIOA program. Maybe there was something difficult going on in their life. They ended up getting their GED. They're now going to the community college. We also offer internships to 2-year and 4-year college students. Many of these students return. These are high-paying internships. And from that, some companies have been able to place 75% of those internships have stayed on and gone directly into employment. We've also, when we're trying to talk about the careers here in Vermillion County, we talk about manufacturing, and a lot of people will say, oh, it's dirty, it's grimy. Well, how do they know if they can't walk into those companies and feel it and touch it and play with it? And so every year we turn around and we offer a tour of industries and open up the doors here in Vermillion County so people of all ages can go through it. And what we've found is some people have decided that they're going to do a career change, and then they'll go back, or they've been laid off and so forth, and then they can go back through our local WIOA and seek the training and so forth that they need. So what we've done is we moved from looking at raw data for our youth programs to moving toward the competencies and credentials, which was some of the things that I just talked about. And so we're training to the skills, not to the titles of the jobs. We collected that data in our report that I mentioned earlier, and what we found out is many of the people, the hiring HRs, did not know that the skill sets that they were looking for was actually within that credential. So that's when we start looking at what are the skills that you were looking for in a particular position. Now, when we tried to do the study with DCEO and Community College Board and so forth, we were able to track it very well with healthcare. Manufacturing became quite a bit of a data nightmare for us, because what one person calls a CNC operator, someone else might call a machinist, which someone else might be calling a production person and so forth. There are so many different titles out there that are used by the Department of Labor. We could not track it at that time without going back and doing a real deep dive into that particular position to identify those skill sets. Can one organization do this by themselves? Absolutely not. It takes, it takes a community. to raise a child or to raise an individual. Well, this is what we are doing. Our employer collaborative gets together, and we look at that some of the top leadership is sitting at our table. We look at shared priorities. What are those shared priorities? And a lot of it is we need skilled positions, we need the basic skill sets, we need someone with a work ethic that can pass a drug test. So all of our programs are based on the shared priorities. We speak with a single voice to the community. In the past, and maybe it happens in your own community, you have school districts who are going to the employers, are going to social service agencies. Can you support us here? Can you help us with this? Can you buy this piece of equipment for us? And at the same time, the employers are going back to the educators and sometimes are saying you're not giving me the quality that I'm looking for. I need students who can do this, this, or this, and you're failing me in this process. So everything comes to the table, and we all speak it back out into that single voice approach. So we're not putting the blame or accusing anyone through this process. We know it's there. How are we going to go together, and we're going to repair it. We shared communication. When the community college is looking at developing a program, they're going to come and they're going to look at our data, or we're going to look at their data when we're trying to develop the program. There is nothing that is being held back from anyone, especially in the data format area. When there is a problem, for example, the community college did not have space for us to continue with our youth apprenticeship training program. So the business turned around and said, instead of canceling the program, why don't we split it this way, that 3 days they're going to be on site and we'll do the training on site at our manufacturing site, and then 2 days we can use the facility where you do have the space. Initially, the program was going to be canceled, and a lot of students were going to miss out on it. But then again, we recognize the problem, we come up with a solution for it, the problem's resolved, and everyone wins through the process. We also look at our best practices consistently. Everything that we run through in our youth programs is evaluated. For example, with our career lab, every student that goes through that, and like I said, every student in 8th grade county, no matter where they are, if they come from a very prominent family to a family that is receiving some kind of aid, they all go through it, and it's there for them to explore that career. Then they feed us back their comments. The students provide that to us. The teachers provide it to us. The guidance counselor is there. They provide information. We look at all that data after every visit. What can we do to tweak it? What can we do to make it better for the students? Are we getting the outcomes and the measures that we had set for the first of the year? If we put a program together that's not getting the results that we're looking for, we will end that program and explain to them why we are moving on with it. We're not going to try to keep feeding a program over and over again if we're not getting the results that we're looking for from the employers as well as the students. We look at what are our quick short-term goals, what are our long-term goals. Many of our youth programs are long-term goals. We're planting the seed. We're letting them do some career exploration. We're letting them do some additional training. We're getting them their certification, and boom, then they go into the workforce. Now, if they're looking for short-term, we're looking at adults. What is it we can do to meet their needs in a short-term training program so we can get them back into the workforce so they don't fall through the cracks? We also are looking at it for those high school students who are going through, say, a GED program. What is it, why is it that they felt that they had to leave school? Was it a personality difference? Was it a teen pregnancy? Was it truancy? What is it? So we give them the resources that they need. We start introducing them to the workforce, and then if we can get them employment while they're getting their GED, then that would be the goal. We're trying to build that person back up, not only with their self-esteem and their worth, but also let them know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. We started out many, many years ago with forklift driving. And there is absolutely, you have to start small. You can't take on the whole elephant at the same time. We start small and we started building all of our programs over the years to where today we have a very unique set of programs that are feeding the pipeline, it's meeting the employer's needs, and we're getting the results. The last one it was we couldn't get the return on the investment because it was how do you go back and calculate that and know when you planted that seed with that youth. And now we have that formula figured out with the assistance of DCEO. When you're putting together your grant programs and or you're looking at how do we fund all of this? The question is what are you trying to fund? Do you need funding? Automatically, it's our human nature to think that we need a lot of big bucks to do this. Our budget every year for our programs, which I shared with you earlier, has been the same since day one. It's $125,000. That includes all those programs, the scholarships, salaries, everything was within that. So once you have your data and you have those programs and you know how many students you're going to try to reach out to during that time frame, do you need 100,000 or can you do it with 50,000? So you have to look at, when we start looking at what are our internal resources, what can we do, how can we make those sustainable resources, and let's build the roadmap. There are things that we tried to take on and we didn't have the resources or the manpower to do it, but another partner did. And that might have been the Danville Area Community College or the school districts, the school's foundations, the employers. So when you're developing your budget, try not to think pie in the sky. Everybody wants pie in the sky, but also look at really how much money do you really need and what other resources are out there in the community. Especially if you're submitting a youth grant to your local WIB and they are already saying this is how much is going to be available. You're going to be out there competing with other organizations going for that same pot of money. And then you have to meet all the criteria to spend those dollars within that time frame. Maybe you ask for too much and then it's going to put that pressure on us. How are you going to do that? Or you turn around and say, okay, these are extra partners, and they're going to provide this resource to it, so that's going to be considered your in-kind to your program or your match if necessary. So you hear very quickly, this is how we have sustained our model. And that's pretty much what I had said earlier. We look at the survey, and we look at through our budget how we're going to set everything up. The businesses, through our model here, they pay to play. Vermillion Advantage is a membership-based organization, so they're paying to sit at the table as a member. Then they pay to play an additional $1,500 to have their voices heard throughout these model program of developing these youth workforce programs. We have not changed that fee in 19 years. So if you have 3,000 employees or if you have 10 employees, everyone pays the $1,500. And then in return, we offer these programs to the youth through their schools, whether it's private or public, at no cost to them. What happens is, what's the incentives for the school districts? The school districts are, number one, getting programs that they couldn't afford or they couldn't find the teacher to teach the class. Two, they don't have to maintain them. And three, what we've also seen in the lower grades is the state testing scores in math and science have increased substantially. We also occasionally will look at special grants through some of the employers here in town, but from all of our programs, we do not receive state or federal funding. We have received some assistance from our local WIOA just because now the WIOA board has realized, as part of their role, they need to go out and collect that workforce data. Why reinvent the wheel? It's already being done by someone else in our community. We're partnering with Vermillion Advantage. We will be able to use their data in order to meet our needs while they're also meeting their needs. So when we've all come together, these are some of the results that we've come up with. We've come up with a stronger brand when recruiting, because through our job boards, through everything that's going on in our programs, through the funding resources and everything, now we've been able to help other communities develop their own talent pipeline, because we're not several different entities out there trying to do the same thing. We are speaking as one voice as Vermillion Advantage. We've got improved leverage in our processes because of the data that we're sharing with everyone, from even the local ROE offices are sharing that information. It's easier management for everyone. The most important is we also have a very clear communication about the talent needs in Vermillion County. And we can project that out over the next 24 months, but we can now go back and look at any trends. One thing I didn't mention earlier in your data is we will look at state and national data, but we take it with a grain of salt. And the reason why is their data is based looking backwards. It's based on looking at previous trends and the economy during that time. So many things have played an impact on that data we look at going forward. Technology is constantly evolving and changing. And what you project out 10 years from now may not even be on the table anymore. So when we look at the state data and they say, okay, from now until 2025, there's so many different denominators in there, so we just take it out and we look at our two-year projection. And we look at the data from the feds, and again, it's only updated every 10 years, and a lot of the job titles will change, and we're also talking about job titles that don't even exist yet, and how can they project that out. So we have a very, very clear picture of what our talent needs are, and we move forward with it. We've also been talking with the state of Illinois of adjusting that. Instead of doing a 10-year, if they could bump it down to a 3 to 5 year window rather than the 10-year, because it's just outdated data. And then again, capacity building. We do it together as a team to build all of our programs. This value stream really shows the suppliers in the process. The Tier 1 suppliers, and you're looking right there from career prep and pre-employment training. This is where we're talking about our high schoolers. This is where we start, and if you go to the left, you'll see career exploration and career awareness. Those are our elementary and junior high programs. We start the training at the high school level, the pre-employment training. We look at that not only with the high schools, but the WIOAs, our youth programs, anyone that is working with you through that process, to looking at onboarding process. What is the onboarding process with the employer? Are they looking at doing some training and to bring those employees on at a staged process? What are they doing to promote those jobs? What are they doing in-house? What does it take once you get them on board and you get the training, and what does that cost to full productivity? What we've been able to do through the Tier 1 suppliers and that pre-employment training is we've been able to reduce that onboarding cost and getting the employee or that student into full productivity at a faster rate than just bring them on board as an adult. So in our younger years, we're looking at career interest and awareness. Our goals through Tier 1 is to reduce the full-time to productivity, and then looking at how do we retain them. Because at that point, then, you know, some individuals are wanting different benefits, higher pay, and so forth. Are we losing them to competition? Are we losing them to other states? That's the step that the employers are doing on how can they then turn around and redesign their benefit package so that the employers are going to want to stay here in Vermillion County. So what we've been able, as I said again, is for the last 19 years, we have built a step-by-step sustainability program to meet the needs, but the strongest focus that we have put on in this is planting that seed with our youth in the county from 8th grade up to the second year of a community college effort. It's something that has taken us a while to build. We're very proud of it. but it's something that just doesn't happen overnight. And as you all are working on developing your own talent pipeline and working with your youth and so forth, again, just as a last comment is know your data, fill the gaps, and be there to support them as they go through that process. And then you'll start to build your own talent pipeline. Any questions?
Hi, Kim. It's actually Andrea. I was wondering if you could go back one slide and just talk to folks about kind of the distinctions that you make between the Tier 3, Tier 2, and Tier 1, just so that's clear as to what that means kind of from the supplier, what you mean by that from kind of a vocabulary perspective.
Sure. Okay, in the talent pipeline, one of the things that we look at is where are the companies getting their best talent? And so are they getting them from a high school program, which would be a Tier 1? If that individual goes from high school directly into employer, that would be a Tier 1 supplier, okay? If they got them, then if they were in high school, what program did they take? Were they in the welding program? Were they in the NIM certification program? That would be a Tier 2. So they were in high school. That's our number one source. Tier 2, they were in a particular program. That would be a Tier 2 employee. And then you say, okay, 3, then they were in the College Express program. So that would be a Tier 3. So what we're looking at is what is the supply that's feeding into the pipeline, and what are the roles that the employers are playing in that process. And as you can see, they're going to cross right over, and the employer's role can reach clear down into career awareness. By being part of our collaborative, they're providing the funding programs and those birth to 5 calendars to start building the cognitive development clear back up as they're aging and going through their education into the employment role. The supplier is who's supplying that training to those individuals. So you can go back, most of them are going to go back to maybe 3 tiers. If you have a student that you hire directly out of, say, the University of Illinois would be your first tier because they came directly from you to the employer right out of college. Tier 2 would be what program they were in. Say they were in mechanical engineering. That would be a Tier 2. So there's your 2 sources. Now, what you're doing is you're finding out that that employee that you just hired doesn't have the right skill sets. You're going to find out that the Tier 2 process, there's a problem. So we're going to go back and talk to that Tier 2, that mechanical engineering program, and saying, based on what we're needing, this is what the employee lacks in that training. So you can tweak it and make it a stronger program and fill that skills gap need. Another good example.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say that I'll say that that was a very complicated concept for me to grasp at first. I really struggled with that, and then once it clicked, it made sense because it's a real diagnostic tool. It's a way for really thinking about where in the supply chain there might be a break and how you can go about fixing it in a much more diagnostic way.
Yes.
Are there any questions from anyone that's on the either on the webinar or on the phone? We'd love to hear from you. We have someone typing. And I apologize for my voice. I think I'm losing it. It's the weather.
One thing I will say is that the TPM process, when you first look at it, it does look complicated, and a lot of it is new acronyms and new processes. But really, when you look at it from your own community and break it down, it is very simple to understand and to grab. And you know, again, you're looking at your data and you're filling the holes. and you're looking at your tiers or your providers as who's providing that for you, and then you're fixing that leak that is going on.
Kim, we have a question from Lisa. Is how much time do you spend in schools, and how do you get them to agree to that time?
Well, that excellent question. There's a couple of different processes that I use. I do have a contract with Danville High School, who is our largest in the county. I'm actually running a career service center there, and I'm there 1 day a week. I could easily be there 5 days a week, just because the demand is that high. So when I am on site, I'm really moving that day. There's no sitting at a desk. There's a lot of meeting with students who have particular questions. The results that we have seen from this is, let's look at it from a college perspective. When you're in college, you have a career service center, and there's someone there to help guide you. Guidance counselors today do not have enough time during the day to do career development. So having me on site 1 day a week to be there to answer questions for students who are either seeking part-time employment now to help mom and dad out at home, or they're looking for that first part-time experience, to what is it that I want to be when I grow up, and helping feed this pipeline into all these other programs. I have developed a program where I can go to the guidance counselor and say, Susie or Johnny or Marquise, they want to go into this particular program. I think they have the skill sets. Have they met their graduation requirement? Let's see if we can get them into this program as an elective. Let's let them try it now before they start wasting that time in college and spending money on it. There are other school districts who want me in their sites. We just don't have the manpower right now. But all of them know that I'm available within a conference call or so forth. The schools are a partner in the process. We don't just tell them what we're going to be doing. They're there asking us to come in. And that's something that we handle very delicately, because you're dealing with guidance counselors and you don't want to be telling them or insinuating that they're not doing a good job, or as well as the math teacher or the CTE teacher. We're here to help them enhance their existing programs. What we've been able to do also is we've been able to get students into those part-time positions. But here's another thing that we've added. Kids don't know what they don't know, and they do not know how to fill out a job application. They do not know how to dress for a job interview. They do not know how to follow up on an on-site interview. So we provide those classes to them. We provide the resume writing, not what they're taught in sophomore technical English, but what the employers are really wanting. And then I will bring McDonald's or Culver's or Burger King or the pizza place or whoever's doing the summer employment hiring or hiring at that time. I bring the employer to the school, and we have a hiring job fair, and we run it very similar to America's Got Talent. The student goes in for the job interview. If they're going to the next level, they get a free McDonald's French fry card. And then that's when they're going into the corporate or to the headquarters there, and they're going to go in for their second interview for the employment. So number one, it's doing it a little bit backwards, but we're having huge success with it.
Any other questions that anyone might have? So insofar as how this is, and I think that, Kim, you did a great job of really kind of mapping this to the work that we're doing with Opportunity Youth here. And I see a lot of ways when you build an employer collaborative that you can bring different audiences into that. I want to make sure that everyone understands that there's no anticipation that somehow you're going to be able to build out a perfect employer collaborative in time to submit this as part of an application. That was never the intent of this particular webinar. I mean, this is something that Vermillion Advantage has been doing for 19 years. And Kim, if you have a few minutes, I'd love to kind of hear about how this actually this actually kind of, the fruition of this, how this came about, what was the kind of the driving impetus for getting this going. But I really want to focus on three things that came out of this webinar for the purposes of the youth opportunity. Is really kind of this focus on continuous improvement, and the methodology that Vermillion Advantage uses is always looking at data, always re-examining programs, never assuming that a program is great just because it exists, but really looking at how is it being used, is it being used, is it useful, and if it's not, let's get rid of it. And really having a continuous improvement methodology that's built into the work that they do. Also this real focus on partnerships and how none of this work actually occurs without those clearly defined partnerships and the roles and responsibilities of those partnerships. Kim, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but I would say that there's very little that you folks do that's kind of ad hoc, but it probably is very, very systematized. And you've really laid out the roles and responsibilities for the employers, for the community service organizations, for anyone that's partnering with you. Those are all roles and responsibilities that are laid out. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah. So really making sure that you're really clear when you're making partnerships as to who's doing what and why, for what reason. It helps to reduce a lot of inefficiency later on and make sure that it doesn't get frustrating for the employers for whom this is, it has to be a value add. And I think I want to make sure that's really clear. And also how to use your resources effectively. I have to say I'm really impressed with the funding model, knowing that the funding itself and what you ask of the employers does not change and has not changed over time, because you're able to say, how do we use our partnerships effectively if we want to grow a program? How do we use the different funding sources from our partners to help pay for some of those programs, and to make sure that we're kind of tying all of our resources, our networks in together, but that the core funding model just kind of stays the same. And that way you're not trying to lean too heavily on folks and really trying to use those resources effectively. So those are the three things that I think for the purposes of this opportunity really should come out of this webinar. So Kim, do you want to just take a few minutes and just talk very briefly about kind of how this idea came about, and how I mean, I kind of get the sense of how it grew, but really, was there one thing, or was it just a series of things that made Vermillion Advantage kind of the right home for this work?
What happened was back in the early 90s, we lost three major employers, very high manufacturing based. We lost General Electric, we lost GM, and we lost Heister. And we had upwards of 17, 18% unemployment. What are we going to do? That was one of our wake-up calls. And at that same time, many of those individuals did not have the proper education or had kept up with their training and how technology was advancing the workforce as a whole. Huge eye-opener for us. The other one was Vermillion County is one of the fastest aging workforce counties in the state of Illinois. If everyone should retire, for example, at our Veterans Administration, 50% of those employees can retire tomorrow. If they all decided to retire this coming Friday, what would we do? And so we're feeding that pipeline and saying, here's are the careers that are available, within the next couple of years, so that people cannot say there aren't any jobs here in Vermillion County. There are plenty of opportunities, and we have Indiana 4 miles on the east side of us. We're competing with Indiana. We're competing with Champaign, Illinois, which is a strong 4-year university base, but yet once you cross from Vermillion to Champaign County, it's night and day. We are a strong workforce, but we're not a strong over there. They are teaching, academics and so forth. They too have unemployment rates problems, but they have a strong university employment base as well. So those were our things, and we decided we needed to come together as one voice and to address this, because if we didn't, who was going to save Vermillion County? And so we got together and started addressing it effectively.
That's really helpful context because I think that that's something that other communities across the state are facing as well, is how do we retain our local talent and how do we grow our local businesses so that our communities are strong. And that's part of the driving force behind this career pathways opportunity, is really thinking about how do we strengthen our communities by also strengthening the opportunities available for young people who are neither connected to school or work. So
another quick data that we use is, do you know where your graduates are going every year? Our high school graduates, where are they going? Do you think they're staying locally? Are they going to your community colleges? Are they going to four-year, or are you losing them to out of state? And so one of the data that we started looking at is where do we know where they're going? So every May I reach out to all the guidance counselors, and they can tell me how many are going to the workforce, how many are going to 2-year, whether it's in-state, out-of-state, or local. 4 years, are they going in the military? Are they going into a trade school? And those who are going directly into the workforce, then I'm able to get that data, and I can send it to our local WIOA and say, here are 60 kids, graduates are going directly in the workforce. They can be served as out-of-school youth using the WIOA program, and then do they need additional training? And if so, let's get them in the programs, let's get them into the workforce. Because if not, they're out there floundering trying to figure out where they fit into the bigger piece of the puzzle.
Makes perfect sense. So Chelsea is actually unmuting the phone.
Your microphone has been turned on.
Just a minute. So does anyone have any questions? Yeah, Chelsea, all the phones are unmuted, and we do have a question from Sid. What are the qualifications or requirements you recommend for instructors and facilitators in the value stream? That's an intriguing question. Kim, do you want to try to take a stab at that?
Sure. Those who, trying to think about how the best way is to answer that. There are many different instructors that are in this value stream process. If we're talking about, the teachers and everything that's in this process, we do a lot of education, a lot of training with the teachers to explain why this is important, as well as the guidance counselors. With the employers, they sometimes are the facilitators and then the instructors as well, because you always have turnover in your workplace. You have turnover with your CEOs, and again, that's where Vicki and I come in, and we work with them one-on-one. Do they need very specific training in this? No. They have to, have a basic understanding of workforce development, economic development. For someone who's going through the TPM process itself, there is training available. There are several different cohorts that are put together through the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. In fact, our second group of training will start in 2 weeks, I believe, out in D.C. So Vicki and I are available to help walk communities through on this. We've been out on the road a little bit and holding people's hands, but it's just a basic understanding of economic development and workforce development. I don't know if that answers your question, but once you have those in there, the understanding the value stream becomes very simple.
And yeah, that seems to have answered the question. Any other questions from our folks on the line? Your phones are all unmuted. So Kim, I actually have a question. What about your higher education partners, and not just your community college, but your four-year partners? Have you been able to partner with any four-year universities, particularly for those jobs that do require the bachelor's degree? Have you had any luck with that?
Yes, actually we're getting ready to expand with our teacher shortage that we're addressing. Again, we always do everything at Danville High School since it's the largest population and we can get some solid numbers to work with. They're trying to grow their own in education, so they started a program called Introduction to Teaching. It's a senior-based program where seniors who are interested can go into education. They get to go out, they explore the career field, the requirements, as well as they get to do a kind of a job shadowing with the teacher and develop some lesson plans. What we've discovered, though, was there wasn't a bridge built between Illinois State and EIU, the two big education colleges. So what we're doing is we're taking that program and we're going to duplicate it and offer it as a CTE program, bridging it back with Eastern Illinois, so the students can go directly into that particular career field, as well as Illinois State. The thing with Eastern Illinois University is they have a agreement already with DACC where you can actually earn your bachelor's degree on the DACC campus and so you can stay here in Vermillion County and take a lot of the classes locally.
The DACC is
I'm sorry, that's our,
College?
yes,
Okay.
Danville Area Community College. So we're starting to bridge those gaps there in that process. One of the other ones that we've been working with is the University of Illinois and Bradley. And so what we've done with Bradley, for example, our project Lead the Way, we started that back in, early 2000 or so. And what we've done is we started again at Danville High School. We built a hybrid for all the other county schools because they couldn't afford that. Project Lead the Way, if you do not know, is a pre-engineering program, but all the skill sets that you learn from this program can easily be applied to just about any career field. So then we built the middle school program, which is the gateway to technology, and then we went clear down into kindergarten and built Project Lead the Way Launch. The University of Illinois is the home base for Project Lead the Way for the state of Illinois. And they are now accepting one, maybe two of the programs as an engineering credential. So the students have already got that out of the way. With Bradley University, what they have done is they automatically tie into Project Lead the Way. Then we looked at it and they said if a student graduates with the Project Lead the Way, the 4 classes as a senior, then we will pay 1/3 of their college tuition to stay in that program in engineering. But then what we developed is we have our CSI scholarships, which is in advanced manufacturing and engineering. So the clusters pay 1/3 of that college tuition. That leaves the student with the remaining 1/3. So 2/3 of that student's cost is being picked up by the businesses, but it's a contractual scholarship. So the student then during their summer breaks comes back, receives a pay to be an internship and try out all the companies here in town. So really we're paying them to come explore the opportunities. Then upon graduating from college, their last semester, they contact Vermillion Advantage and they say, I'm graduating, I'm ready to be placed. We will then go back to those employers and say, okay, Johnny Smith is getting ready to graduate, who wants to interview him? They interview him and they get a job. Their agreement is that they will come back to Vermillion County and work in Vermillion County for 2 years. We've had this program now for over 10 years, and in that 10 years, we have only lost one student. And she had completed her 2-year program, 2-year commitment with the employer, but she had some special needs. Her family moved to Florida, and that was her support system, so she had to go with them. So she ended up having, she was a double major in computer science and electrical engineering. She was deaf, and so graduated with honors, was employed for 2 years here in town, but when her support system left, she needed to go with them. Otherwise, every one of them are still here, employed, and some have transferred from the manufacturing cluster over to the healthcare cluster because their skill sets were transferable.
And when you say that they've transferred into the healthcare cluster, you mean that they're employed now in the healthcare field?
That's correct.
Yeah. So this is a fascinating program. Do you have any literature on that you would feel comfortable sharing?
Which program? The scholarship program?
Yeah, the scholarship program.
Sure.
That would be fascinating.
Sure. It's just a simple application That's really what it is. And then we just, run it through. They apply, and there is a signed agreement that the parent signs and the student signs, because let's say the student is in going into mechanical engineering, and then they decide, I don't want to go into mechanical engineering, I want to go into welding. Well, welding's not something that we're covering. And so no matter what we paid, the student has to pay back the funds. So we're going to make pretty sure that that student is focused, and that goes back to the value stream. Were they in Project Lead the Way in middle school? Were they in it in high school? Did they do any of that, career preparation or the employment training? And then we get them into that scholarship program. You want to make pretty sure, because you don't want to go 4 years of college and decide this isn't the career field for me. What's the return on the investment for that parent who's been putting that money forward?
Yep, I 100% agree. What other questions are there? Go ahead. I'm sorry, Kim. Go ahead.
I'll send you that information, and then you could forward it out to everyone.
That'd be great. Are there any other questions for Kim or for myself?
I have one for yourself. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Yes.
Kim, go ahead.
No. I joined late, but I just wanted to know, was the and I couldn't get access to the site for the webinar. Will you be sending out the PowerPoint so that I can go over this, because there was some awesome information, and I really got the gist of it, but I just didn't get the full scope of it.
Sure. Chelsea is actually answering a question for that, so she'll post this on WorkNet, so this will be all available.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any other thoughts? Well,
I can say this, Kim, as in closing, if anyone has any questions at any time after this is over with, my contact information is on the PowerPoint. Don't hesitate to reach out to Vermillion Advantage.
Sounds like a good plan. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. And if you have any follow-up questions, Matt Hillen and I will be having our Q&A webinar in about 2 hours. So you can either email us or hop on that webinar in about 2 hours, okay? Thanks, everybody, so much for participating. And a special thank you to Kim for taking time out of her day to present this information. Truly appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you.